Welcome to the Bogosity Podcast for the 20th of August 2012, the podcast that refuses to release its birth certificate or its tax returns. This is your host, Shane Killian. Let's release to the public domain the news of the bogus. How many videos have to be blocked due to bogus DMCA takedowns before our politicians start rethinking our insane copyright laws? Probably never, since big media has better lobbyists. But you'd think that something that belongs to all of us, that we paid for, that is absolutely 100% indisputably in the public domain, something like that being taken down for copyright infringement would at least warrant cocked eyebrows from politicians. Of course, we were all excited to watch the landing of the new Mars rover Opportunity. You know, if that's the only thing outside the Constitution the government was doing, I wouldn't really mind so much. Anyway, many of us watched and rewatched NASA's YouTube video of the landing. Well, those of us who got in early anyway. After that, despite the fact that NASA videos, like all material produced by the federal government, is public domain, despite the fact that NASA themselves uploaded it to NASA's official channel, the video was taken down by a false DMCA claim. This podcast has covered the hideous infringement of freedom of the press committed by several governments with regard to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Now, Ecuador has granted him asylum, but the UK says it will not allow him to leave the country. So Assange has been staying at Ecuador's London embassy, but the police have now surrounded the embassy and have threatened to arrest Assange and anyone helping him as soon as they step foot outside. While Ecuador stands up for free press rights, the rest of Latin America is standing up for something else. While the Obama administration continues its reign of oppression, locking up people who have caused no harm to anyone else, Latin American leaders are coming out against the failed and insane war on drugs. The leaders of several countries, traditional allies with the U.S. in this bogus war on plants, are saying it's time to rethink the whole thing. One of these days, people are going to start listening to me when I tell them well-meaning legislation has unintended consequences. Case in point, the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, has actually resulted in a greater number of states teaching abstinence-only education. What hasn't been well publicized is a provision of the Affordable Care Act which calls for abstinence-only policies in secondary education. Moreover, the act provides $50 million a year over 5 years for abstinence-only programs. Nancy Pelosi said that we had to pass it to find out what was in it. Well, we're finding out, aren't we? Do you need any more reason to call or write your Congress members and tell them to sponsor the Read the Bills Act? Another victory repeatedly touted for the Obama administration is its $25 billion bailout of General Motors. We're told by the president and his apologists that this was necessary to keep GM from going bankrupt, which would take down the domestic auto industry and result in the reduction of our global competitiveness, the destruction of millions of jobs, much more polluted air, plagues of locusts, and the earth crashing into the sun. The problem is, now it seems that General Motors is headed for bankruptcy anyway, and the government bailout won't even break even, much less turn a profit as was promised. And now it's time to nullify this week's biggest bogon emitter. And this week it goes to prosecuting attorney Michael Valentine for successfully undermining justice by deceiving a jury and getting them to convict a guy who didn't actually commit any crime. Ademo Friedman is a reporter with copblock.org who was reporting on the assault of a 17-year-old high school student by a policeman. To this end, he spoke with several public officials, recording them as is standard practice for news reporting. But Valentine didn't call it reporting, he called it, get this, felony wiretapping. And now it's time to put on hold and play cheesy music to this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Alfonso Rachel is the host of Zone Nation on PJTV. Don't react, it's not as impressive as it sounds. He makes videos extolling the virtues of nut-wing religious conservatives over liberals, atheists, and those wacky libertarians. The fail has to be heard to be believed.